Our job is to find the facts, but more importantly, our job is to make sure this tragedy doesn't happen again, regardless of what anyone may be saying. Our investigators never want to see this happen again, and I never want to have to go back and brief another set of family like that.
That's National Transportation Safety Board member Todd Inman. He's taken a key role in investigating and communicating with the public in the wake of an unimaginable tragedy. In that clip, he's speaking to national media just days after the January 29th crash between American Airlines Flight 5342 and a U.S. Army helicopter. It's the deadliest U.S. air disaster since November 2001, resulting in 67 deaths after the two aircraft crashed into the Potomac River. As of February 5th, that crash has already resulted in new rules from the FAA. Those govern helicopter and passenger plane traffic over that section of the Potomac to prevent future crashes. In our interview, member Inman reflects on the role of the NTSB and the importance of maintaining an independent agency in highly polarized times. He also reflects on his roots in small-town Calvert City, Kentucky, and his journey to Washington. I'm Bryce Patterson. Welcome to the Crossroads Suncast.
Well, I thought I was a wonderful kid, but if you would have asked my mom and dad, my mom said I was always special and her favorite. Of course, I'm an only child. Calvert City is an interesting town. 3,000 people, two stoplights, a Dairy Queen, but has a large chemical presence in the employment area. Actually, was on the Explorer program for the Calvert City Fire Department back whenever I was very young. So it was kind of something of interest. We went to Marshall County High School and then went on to school in Oxford, Mississippi at Ole Miss. Still get back occasionally. My mom and dad just passed in the last 2 years. So, I mean, I still was back there quite often. Ironically, today, whenever I'd done a radio interview and I went to type in my name to a media outlet in that area. And I just put the last name of Inman. And whenever it came up, it was my mom's obituary. So, I mean, there's still roots there. I still get a lot of texts and calls from people at home. Obviously, they're proud. They hate that they have to see me in this situation, but they're glad that somebody they know that's out there doing it.
I'm interested in just, in these times that you get to come back, how has Calvert City changed over the course of your life? Or what does it look like now compared to how it was when you were a kid?
It's interesting because I won't give the exact age, but let's just say roughly somewhere in the 50-year range. But the town said population 3,000 whenever I was growing up there is 8, 9 years old. It still says 3,000. I think it was lying back then and it's still lying today. But it's an amazing community. It's wonderful. It has such a just outpouring of people taking care of each other. Our next door neighbors. He was the he was the town doctor for so long, and I still exchange Christmas cards, chat with them, keep up with their family where I can. There's a lady named Sissy Womack in Benton that still lets me know the news of what's going on at home. So that's kind of nice. It's good to have that a little bit of connective tissue, so to speak.
Yeah, and so, yeah, I mean, you mentioned the fire department. Tell me a little bit about your kind of movement into there, and then from there to eventually DC.
Well, the Explorer program was just something you could volunteer for and learn about. But after I graduated college, I started with State Farm, and I spent 6 years in their claims organization, and three of those six I was in the special investigative unit. So I did arson and organized crime. Went on to open my own agency in Owensboro, Kentucky. Originally thinking I was going to be there for 1 year, but after the first year, I'd met someone and decided to stay, which was obviously to my parents was a wonderful thing because it was only 2 hours away. I spent 17 years there until the opportunity came to come and serve in the previous Trump administration, and it was Elaine Chao, and so she asked if I would come to DC, and I did. Started as the director of operations for about a year and a half, and then the deputy chief of staff, and then the last 2 years I was the chief of staff to the secretary of transportation. I got to see the world, got to do amazing things, and help a lot of people, and just experience things that I never thought I would have being a kid from Calvert City. It was a wonderful time, and my parents were so proud. In fact, still whenever I go home, I will have someone run across me and say, "Your dad gave me one of your challenge points," and this would be somebody that's like at the cashier at the grocery store. or a bank teller. He was proud, and my mom was too. They would clip articles that would have my name in it. They would have somebody make photocopies. And Dad would ride around in his car with a folder of my newspaper articles about me and just show people, proud people. Um, Went on from whenever I finished my 4 years there to Florida, where I'd met my wife and became the Secretary of Management Services there. So about 1,000 people. The Department of Transportation had around 55,000 at that time. So it's a pretty massive organization, including the FAA. And went on to be the Secretary of Management Services in Florida. Spent a year and a half in that time, in that frame. And my wife was promoted during that period. So we decided to not have an airport marriage, so to speak. And we moved to DC and I went to work for a consulting firm. And ironically, in 2020 November, I had indicated an interest of going on to the NTSB because I was at the Department of Transportation whenever the Boeing Max crashes occurred. And that was pretty impactful. And it was I got to see what the NTSB did. I valued what they did and thought I wanted to try to be a part of it. Took, over 3 years before a slot came up for another Republican to be nominated. So it was under the Biden administration as a Republican. I was nominated and finally confirmed in March of 2024 and sworn in officially on, I think, March 13th of 2024. So I'm coming up on almost my 1 year anniversary here.
You strike me as being just very, very comfortable with the media. I mean, you're very easy to talk to, seeing you kind of in the wake of this crash as well. I'm interested, was that something that always kind of came naturally to you? Was it something you felt like you had to learn? And what has that experience been like?
So for the NTSB, they do a lot of great training for us. I mean, because you have to be very careful. It's interesting. I've had to tell people. I've had to kind of reprogram some things I say in normal times. Uh, I am now, whenever I see someone or greet someone or talk to a group, I no longer say good morning or good afternoon because when we're meeting with a family or in the press, it's typically not a good morning or afternoon for them. So now I just say afternoon or morning. So you have to learn a few of those things, and I won't say it takes practice, but it is something that's important to not only the families but to the public that they have trust in what we're doing. So you have to make sure you convey the information accurately. But no board member can do this without a lot of other people behind them. Our Office of Aviation Safety is about a little over 100 people. They have 1,700 years of experience at the MTSB collectively. We have some really great experts that do this and they feed information to us. And then we try to make sure we presented it in a way that the public can understand it and it will help people get a better grasp of what's happened. But ultimately, our job is to come up with what we call the probable cause. From that, we also say these are contributing factors, and it can be everything from weather to a manufacturer to a human error. And that'll come out in our investigative report when we're ultimately done. But the biggest part of that is recommendations. Recommendations are ones that we make to the government, to plane manufacturers, to airlines, to the military, of how we can prevent this tragedy from occurring again. We've done over 15,000 recommendations in the 50 plus years that the NTSB has been around, and 84% of them have been adopted. So there's a reason why people are able to travel safely. It's because of work in the past.
So I'd like to know, just for you, the driver, and particularly what kind of brought you to the Transportation Safety Board in particular. What's the motivator for you there?
I mean, the original, I always had an interest in the NTSB. I mean, it's this white hat, gold standard, small agency, but does impactful work. When people are really desperately wanting answers and they want to know what happened. I mean, who wouldn't want to work for an organization like that? For me, I would say the main impetus was the Boeing Max crashes. The first crash was a tragedy. The second one was a travesty. And I hope by being able to bring my understanding of how the Department of Transportation works, we can implement good recommendations. Every one of the board members brings something completely different. We have a former Navy pilot, we have a mayor of Jacksonville, we have an attorney that worked for the Commerce Committee and at one point for the Airline Owners Association. We have a former staff director from Congress. We have a lot of different interests, and collectively we come to these recommendations.
Talk to me a little bit about, I know it's ongoing investigation right now. I'm interested in just the process and your experience in like a leadership role when something just unimaginably horrible like this happens. What kind of kicks into gear?
Well, it starts from the moment we get an alert, and in my case, it's very unique. This is in our backyard. My where I live, I face part of the DCA airport, so I've got a notification from someone that was actually on a plane that was supposed to land. It was the next plane to land, and he's in the air saying, "We just got a notice from our captain. We need to circle because of an incident." And that sets off a really big chain reaction between not only our teams, but our operations center. We have a 24-hour a day, 7 day a week, 365. It's called a ROC, a Response Operations Center. So we have people there that are putting like every incident across the country. And so they start sending out notices. We start bringing together people. And what we basically do is start organizing the investigation. The first and foremost thing that has to happen, though, is the attempt for the recovery, or excuse me, for the rescue of any victims that could be. Unfortunately, there was none in this case, but had that happened, we're still going to evaluate it in this investigation to make sure that we can try to save as many lives as possible. But what from there, basically, what happens is we setting up what's called the party system, and it's really unique for the United States in which that the NTSB leads the investigation and brings a lot of different, if you will, organizational expertise, everything from the engine manufacturer, the Airline Pilots Association, the flight attendants unions, the air traffic controllers unions, and we form what are called different operating groups, everything from structures, operations, helicopters, weather, air traffic control. Every one of those are a different group, and people from all of these different parties embed in there. So, we have 300 and excuse me, roughly 436 employees at the at the NTSB, so we can't be everywhere and do everything. We've run 1,000 investigations this past year. But what we do is take on those parties and those experts, and we're the ones that lead the investigation, validate, but everyone gets to have a say and make sure they agree with what are called group chairman reports. And that ultimately feeds up into the total investigative report that the board views. It's all done in the public eye, which is important. All of the material that goes into a docket will be available to the public, with the exception of the names of the individuals that were maybe involved in, like the Black Hawk, the pilots, the all of the passengers. We take that out, but other than that, everything is in there. And we debate this in public, and we vote, and then we come out with the investigation. It's a very transparent process, and it's very effective. But it is not immediate. It's not like a 1 hour TV show where you come up with a conclusion at the end or the next week. It doesn't work that way because you want people to be assured that we have looked at every potential issue and outcome and factor and either ruled it out or ruled it in.
So I want to highlight, I think what you're saying there about transparency is really, really interesting. Can you tell me why is transparency so important for an agency like the NTSB?
First and foremost, trust. If there was any belief that we were attempting to skew this investigation one way or another, or to direct it in another way, you don't continue to maintain the trust of not only the recipients of your recommendations, but the families that were involved and everyone in the transportation system. The great thing about being at the NTSB is that we are what's called an independent agency. So we're partially one party, partially another party, but while we're kind of a part of the executive branch, we're independent of the Department of Transportation and the Federal Aviation Administration. We have separate offices, we have separate reporting structures. So we make recommendations to all of them. But in the end, by being transparent and opening up the docket, anyone can evaluate our work and see how we got there. And most times we're pretty spot on, but occasionally we do miss something. In fact, you can, after an investigation's done, if someone in the public finds something that may have been missed, there can be a petition for reconsideration, and we get those not very often, but occasionally. In fact, in the last year, we agreed that we had one small issue on an investigation several years ago that we should change because there was new scientific evidence and new testing. It's very rare, but by putting everything out there, including the investigative material, No one can say that it was not looked at and that they can't come to the same conclusion we did.
Just kind of broadly, and I think you've touched on this already, but I'd just like to hear from you, why is the NTSB important? Why is an organization like this important, and how does it impact people's lives?
Well, it's interesting. The NTSB was originally formed, and a lot of people don't remember this, but back 50, 60 years ago, I mean, planes would crash like we have this past week once a year, maybe 2 times a year. It was becoming a succession that was happening. So Congress decided that it needed an independent agency, and it kind of went through a couple of iterations until we finally became completely independent around 50 years ago. And our job is to be the sole investigator and arbitrator, if you will, of the probable cause of airplane crashes, civil aviation. Now, military is different, but that is civil aviation. As we went along, we picked up highway investigations. We also have hazardous material. We have pipelines. We have rail uh, vehicles, but we can't do every one of them. So we try to find the ones, but in aviation, we have to do every one. So we did over 1,000 aviation accidents last year. In some of the other categories, we try to make sure that we're getting the most impact and where we can make a safety change. And then those teams in aviation are supported by another 48 individuals that work in research and engineering. Whenever we talk about black boxes and recorders, those are actually orange. But we have a team that does nothing but read reporters, and they're known across the world for being some of the best experts. In fact, there was a South Korean crash in December, the very end of December, which the black boxes had some significant damage and they could not be read in South Korea. So they brought them to the United States because we have the expertise. I mean, America, it invented aviation. Why would we not be the leader and continue to maintain that and make it the safest form of transportation available?
You've mentioned a lot the NTSB being this kind of independent organization. And, I think living in just extremely partisan times, I'm interested in what is the significance of the NTSB being being an independent agency like that?
The significance is people can still have trust. They know that we're going to do the process the way we've always done it before. We know we are going to come up with, again, the probable cause, contributing factors, and everyone's invested in this. I mean, the hundreds of people that are working on this investigation, over 50 just from our organization directly, but there's hundreds. They all care about what comes out of this because they don't want it to be their family. I mean, I fly in and out of DCA every day. In fact, about 2 months ago, I was coming in from Boston after speaking to a Port Authority group, and we lost one of our engines upon right before landing at DCA. But the great thing about it is, while they had to declare an emergency, take us to another airport, and we landed, fire trucks start coming to us. They were only coming because they were checking to see if there's any fuel or if anything coming out. We were safe because they knew the checklists. And in the past, we'd learned from every one of those incidents of how to handle it, what to do, where to go. We ended up going to Dulles, which is interesting because it has a much longer runway. We went there because with one engine, you need a lot more approach and the ability to have some different types of challenging winds or not challenging winds. We learn from those things and we execute them. So, I mean, the primary thing is, again, we never want to see this type of tragedy happen again. So that's the reason why the independence and the ability to validate the investigation is so important.
So, what's next at this point? Y'all are investigating right now. What comes out of this?
So traditionally, within 30 days, we try to issue a preliminary report. And it'll have facts as we know it. We already know a few of those. It was a CRJ from Wichita. We know it was a Black Hawk. We know how many people were on board. We know that they collided midair. We have video of that. We'll restate some of those items and some other things that we know that without a doubt are truly factual. But the really hard work comes after we get done on the scene, and that's what everyone's doing at the airport now is collecting the perishable evidence, making sure we've got it. We're moving a lot of things out of the river right now. In the next few days, we hope to have the Black Hawk out, and that'll all be put into hangars, and then it'll start to be analyzed. After that 30 days, these groups all come together, start looking at more and more information and then analyzing, and then each group will come up with what's called a group chairman report That'll be fed into the larger organization, and then they'll start considering the final basically findings. But in between there, and it's not uncommon on a major aviation accident, we may have what are called investigative hearings. And again, that's completely in the public's eye. For the Alaska Air 1282 involving the Boeing airplane where the door plug came out several months ago, we did 2 days, 10 hours a day of investigative hearings where we asked executives from Boeing, the manufacturers, and others all types of questions, all in the public view, all webcast. It was interesting. We saw that after the webcast statistics, 4,000 people were watching that, individual people from 42 countries. That's who watched the Boeing investigative hearing. I don't know. We'll have to vote as a board if we think we should do another investigative hearing. It's not uncommon, but it'll be a good year. We will take as long as it takes to come up with the factual information. Our desire and hope is to do it within 2, but if it takes longer, we will take longer until we know for sure. And anytime in between there, if we feel and find something that we believe puts anyone's lives at risk immediately, we will issue an urgent safety recommendation without having to go through the investigative process. But if we know when we see it and it's so glaring, we will come out right away to make sure that a change can be made immediately.
The only last thing I wanted to ask is just if there's anything you'd like to say back to the community where you grew up. Our audience is here in West Kentucky largely. Is there anything you'd like to say just to the people of Calvert City?
I actually have a couple of things in my office that were gifts from friends because I've used this saying a few times. I'm just a kid from Calvert City. Uh, you never can tell if it's going to be you. I was texting with the sheriff of Calvert, or sorry, yeah, the chief of police from Calvert City a little while ago. He saw me on TV. Said, "Want to let you know we're rooting for you." That's good to know. But the better thing is to know is that we're all human here. I came from where they came from. I know it's kind of funny. One of the people in my office knows if you she can repeat this, but if you're wanting to go to Paducah, you've got to pass through Possum Trot. But if you've gotten a monkey's eyebrow, you've gotten too far. I'm one of them. I will always be one of them. And they should have trust that people in the government that are doing this safety work care about them.
If you're enjoying Season 1 of the Crossroads Suncast and have a story you'd like to hear from us, reach out. Best way? Send an email to newstip@wpsdlocal6.com or to news@paducasun.com.